August 23rd, 2019, San Francisco. The Sales Development Conference, the third annual conference focused and dedicated 100% to sales development. Join over 500 of the most influential sales development leaders in our industry for a full day of learning, networking, and growing your skills. This year, we're offering 3 learning tracks focused on sales development leadership, rep training, and our newest track dedicated to sales and marketing operations. Grab your tickets today before it sells out over at tenbound.com/conference. That's tenbound.com/conference. See you August 23rd. You're listening to the Sales Development Podcast, the only audio forum focused and dedicated 100% to sales development. If you care about growing your skills and getting more new sales appointments, pipeline, and closed-won deals, you came to the right place. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, iTunes, or Spreaker, and be sure to go back and listen to all the episodes for the best strategies, tips, and tactics out there on running a high-performance sales development program. And now, your host, founder, and CEO of Tenbound at tenbound.com, David Delaney.
CRM has been proven to limit sales reps' responsiveness, persistency, and cadence. It's a design flaw, and it's losing you deals. That is why today's sales leaders use sales engagement platforms like VanillaSoft. Check it out. Go to vanillasoft.com and start your free trial.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sales Development Podcast. This is going to be an awesome show. I have on here Addison Lee, Director of Sales Development Leader with Conversica. How are you doing today, Addison?
I am doing fantastic, David. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm a longtime listener, first-time caller, so great to be here.
Nice, dude. That's awesome, dude. I'm glad that you're on the show, and I want to dig in real quick on your background, especially let's talk about this race car driver, passion that you have. But if people don't know you, they haven't met you, tell us about yourself and how you got into sales development.
Yes, always happy to get into race cars. I guess, quick background and the way I kind of got into the sales development world. Funny enough, out of college, I actually was going into a career in real estate. It was in 2009 and not the best time to get into real estate. Any of you were around then. It was kind of the bottom of the market and one of the worst times since I can remember. And ended up working for somebody in car-related business, which is, kind of a big passion outside of work. Ran a business for 3 years. And after that, through kind of connections in the car world, ended up working at Zora, which was my entry way into the tech world. And I started as an inbound SDR there and haven't really looked back since. Been loving it in working in tech and the SDR world, and kind of also have gone into marketing and the AE world in the last 6 years as well, which we can maybe get into a little bit. But that's the quick background.
Nice, dude. And, it's amazing. I was just talking about this, that the sales development is sort of like the connective tissue, between all these different departments to make it work. So you got some background in sales, you're touching on marketing, you're right in the SDR world, and you have an entrepreneurship background, which is really interesting. But yeah, tell me about the car racing, because that is, not a long story, but I went out, like this new CRO came in and his team building thing was to go out to this racetrack and drive these like super souped up go-karts. And we had to go through this whole training process and do all this stuff. And then we went out there and it was pretty intense, man. It was pretty freaky. And this was a go-kart. So race driving, how'd you get into that? And what was that like?
Yeah. So I guess like most people who get into race car driving, it was through my dad. So it's a little bit of a high barrier to entry in terms of kind of learning the ropes for the mechanical side of things, engineering side of things. It's a very interesting sport, unlike a lot of stick and ball sports where there's a lot of things that go into it, from those aspects of engineering and working on things mechanically. And was lucky enough to get immersed into that world and kind of get the fuel in my veins, as they say. And from basically elementary school have been into either kind of fixing up cars at a 65 Mustang, and elementary school that my dad and I built and took that to the track a couple of times and got my racing license before I had a driver's license to start playing around with cars on the racetrack. And it's always been a big hobby of mine. And, I think there's actually, interestingly, a lot of ties into the business world and even specifically sales development, which maybe we'll get into. But I think what I find is a lot of sports in general, I think especially auto racing, a big part of it is kind of this hyper focused, or a lot of people call it a flow state or being in the zone. And I think that translates really well into being a really effective SDR, which maybe we'll get into some of that a little bit later. But
yeah, I want to dig in on that because you know, when you're on the racetrack, like a couple of things that I think of when you mention that is you have to be super prepared. I mean, like, you've got to have all your ducks in a row from a mechanic perspective, and also like your mindset has to be right for getting in that situation. And then also, like, once you're in that situation, you literally cannot be thinking about, like, I'm going to screw this up. Like, if that thought enters your head while you're going like 70 miles an hour around a hairpin turn, you might die, right? So it's like, I'm really curious, how do you take those things and the other life lessons and stuff from race car driving and put them into the sales development world?
Yeah, you really don't want to be thinking about whether you tightened your lug nuts coming into turn 2 at Laguna Seca at 140 miles an hour. So, maybe some could argue that there's a part of the brain missing that has that kind of that concern. But I think, since a lot of us race car drivers are still alive and not injured, I think one could also argue that there is this element of preparedness and really kind of focus, right? I think it really comes back to focus, where yes, there's a lot of things you could be thinking about, worrying about when you're on the track, and lots of things where you can look at your gauges, you can look at behind you or in front of you or around the corner, but really figuring out kind of where to focus and what to think about and wipe everything else aside is really important. And that's, I think, if you look at a lot of successful race car drivers, and interestingly, there are quite a few professional and also just amateur race car drivers in the tech world, and people at pretty high levels. In fact, I think the CEO of CrowdStrike and quite a few other people are huge into auto racing. I think it's a common attribute that drives success, having that hyper focus and being able to kind of wipe everything aside to really buckle down and concentrate on kind of similar cognitive tasks, is how I'd kind of relate it back to the business world.
Yeah, dude, exactly. Because, and it just makes me think, like, I heard that the golf industry is dying because who's got like 3 hours to go out there and walk around, and also the real high powered CEOs now, they do like auto racing and jumping out of airplanes and like extreme sports. So like the golf industry is just hurting right now. But anyways, and I think that, from an SDR perspective, like, there's so many distractions and there's so many pulls for your time and attention. And the correlation with auto racing is like, if you can take some of that into your daily life from an SDR perspective, you could just like blow away your competition, because the real competition is focus, it seems like.
Yeah. And, every team I've either been on or run in the SDR world, it's a huge thing, figuring out how you're going to focus people on a team. And I think most companies, especially today, have pretty open floor plans. And this is something in building the team here at Conversco we've struggled with from the start. And I think we've put some stuff in place to really make some big improvements. And in fact, we even have kind of in the zone times And people, everybody has kind of their different ways of how they either let other people know that they're in the zone or, have their kind of calendar blocked, things like that. But there's so much data out there that shows how big of an improvement it is to really set time aside to do like cognitive tasks in the SDR world, right? What that means, building out contacts, right? If you start to build out a couple contacts and then you start to call them or create messaging for them, and then you switch to doing some other tasks, like maybe meeting with your AE, you're going to be all over the place mentally. And I think the data shows it's something like 50% less efficient when you don't spend more than 30 to 60 minutes spent doing like cognitive tasks. So the different cognitive tasks would be things like building contacts, creating messages, being on the phone and making calls, meeting with your AEs, researching accounts. All of those different things should kind of be blocked into different time buckets. And don't answer emails as they come in as you're doing those. Don't go on Instagram and like a bunch of stuff. Just block everything else out. And it's amazing to see improvements in people. And again, it's data pretty clearly shows it's something like 50% efficiency gains when you can really do that.
Amen. If you're out there, try this. Like, just go on your calendar and look out in advance to next week or the week after, and start just making huge blocks of time that you're only gonna monotask. That's just in anybody, like even if you're not an SDR, like breaking down your top tasks that get you the most results, and then really being guarded as much as you can with your calendar. Your calendar is where it's at, because you can block it out, and then as different things come in, you can be like, hey, I gotta weigh what my priorities are. So and that's something that you take from racing. Now, how, as a leader, as an SDR leader, is it more like you teach your team this and you hope that they implement it? Or, how granular can you get as far as like micromanaging? Do you actually walk around and you go, hey, when's your focus time? Like, what are you doing? Because I think people, they look at these, like, so say they do step one. It's like, I'm going to cold call for like 2 hours. And then they look at their calendar and they're like, ugh, that's kind of hard. I'm going to do Instagram instead because that feels good right now, instead of the hard stuff that's going to help me. So how do you manage that as a leader?
Yeah, so I follow all of my reps on Instagram, and I have a bullwhip, and I give them lashings for every. No. I think
you heard it here first, folks. SDR leadership tip of the day.
No, so it's one of those things. You can only tell people to do things so much. I think what I've found is you've really got to get people bought in on the idea that this is something that's going to help them, or else it's going to be short-lived, right? I think I've seen a lot of changes made where it's kind of a force-fed approach, where we say, hey, we're going to do power hours 2 times a day, every day. And, after the first 3 days, it kind of falls to the wayside and people go back to their normal pattern, even if it's blocked on their calendar. However, if you can really get people to believe and see for themselves that this is a strategy that works, and they see results from other people that are doing it, well, in this kind of eat what you kill world of sales, it will come naturally that people start to do this, right? So that's more of the approach that I try to take. And I think it's been working pretty well over here.
Yeah, and it seems like if you get the right people on board, that kind of bring that mindset before they even come in, and then you reinforce that, like, it's a lot easier than trying to, like, it's a lot easier to hold somebody back than push them, off the couch, So it's like, it also comes back to who is on your team. Are they the type of people that would take that advice?
Yes, absolutely. Hiring strategy is one of the most important things, I think, as a sales development leader, because then everything falls downstream from that. So, great point.
Yep, and you mentioned the open floor plan. I want to talk about that because I'm from the old days when we had cubicles. Nobody probably on this knows what those are, but I found that open floor plans were just horrible as far as for productivity and like trying to focus on what you're doing. And so tell me about, what are your thoughts? What do you guys do? And what do you think of those?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things from being at all of my past companies, thinking about it, it's always been an open floor plan. The biggest thing, the closest thing we've had to cubicles is like a little divider in between SDRs.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things that, right or wrong, you kind of have to accept and adapt to. And, and this is one of those things that we've tried to really embrace and make a positive, where, hey, some reps just naturally want to go into the corner, into a room when they make calls and walk around and pace, and that can be distracting for other people on the team. So trying to figure out something that works for everybody. And, maybe the pacers, we kind of put them in the end of the aisle so that they have some room where they aren't bumping into everybody. And, we are limited on conference rooms here because, we're just busting at the seams growing and never have enough space. So it's really being able to kind of make it work. And, some of the other tactical things, right, are we do have these in the zone hours where everybody kind of is buckled down. They aren't just talking across desks and then start, a million different conversations every hour. It's okay to have that happen sometimes. I don't want to create a culture where people are just silently sitting at their desk making calls. I probably don't want to work at a company like that, and I don't think many other people would. It'd be probably hard to hire people if that was the culture we had. So, I think you have to accept the fact that, hey, there will be some of these kind of conversations happening across desks that other people will get involved with. But just kind of bucket those into smaller buckets of time. So maybe you have 10 minutes where everybody just, hey, takes a breather after really crushing dials or building contacts or researching those types of things, and say, hey, let's all check our Instagram. Let's, talk about the game that happened last night, all those different things, and kind of get it out of the system.
Yeah. So even blocking like distraction time. Okay. It's distraction time. Go. Snapchat the shit out of it, man. Go. But and then it's like call blitz time. And with the open floor plan, like I think that the original idea, like when you think about it, it's really fun. It's collaborative. You can see everybody. It's very transparent. Like if someone's surfing the net and doing like weird stuff, you can see what they're doing. So it like kind of a forcing function that everyone's actually working, because you never know, like somebody could walk up behind you. And it's also a lot cheaper. I think obviously a build out for an office is going to be a lot cheaper because you don't have to build all that stuff. So, there's a lot of advantages to it, but it's like, I love what you're saying. It's like, as a leader, you're actually setting up like the blocks of intense activity, and then it's okay. It's like we're going to have a loud time, and then we're going to have a quiet time, and then we're going to, have like distraction time and like block it out like that. So to take advantage of it. So those are some awesome ideas. I wanted to ask you, like, but let's talk about Conversica, if that's okay. This came on the scene. I started hearing about it like 3 or 4 years ago. People were talking about it. And like, what does it do? How does it help sales development reps and, build pipeline? And like, what's going on over there if people are not familiar with it?
Yeah. So I came on board here this year, and actually, funny enough, was evaluating the platform at my last company at Aptus when I was running marketing operations. And I've been drinking the Kool-Aid pretty hard. So forgive me if that comes through too much, but it's pretty cool. But basically what it enables is we give the ability to have sales teams and a lot of other teams and different things that we do. Gives the ability to have a hybrid workforce. And so how we do that is basically having human-like assistants that are able to book meetings for SDRs. And I said human-like because they're actually a digital assistant that's powered by an AI platform. So a little bit of kind of buzzwords and some future-looking stuff, but it works, and we use it internally, and it's pretty crazy how kind of this AI assistant can really drive kind of meetings from pretty much inbound leads. There's a couple of different use cases, but for the most part, our core business right now is following up with inbound leads and then just kind of doing light qualification to the point where we know that they're either interested or not interested in booking a meeting and getting it to the SDR.
Are you in sales, but you're not using a sales engagement tool? Then you're probably losing out on revenue because you are not engaging with prospects at the right time, with the right cadence, and with enough persistency. You need VanillaSoft. Start your free trial today. Go to vanillasoft.com.
Got it. Okay. So, someone on the operations side would set it up and they would get it all dialed in so that it's asking the right questions to be able to qualify before handing it over to the SDR. And then how does it work? Like, is it a chat box that's on the website? Or I know if I send an email form through the website, it'll reply back to me, right? How does it work, like from a customer perspective?
Sure. So really the core use case that we see most often is things like form fills, as you mentioned. Anybody that submits their information or somehow raises their hand, right? I think we'll just call that an inbound lead for now, for simplicity's sake. Which also can include things like trade shows, right? When those come in, typically, right, an SDR team, either whether you have a separate inbound team or a hybrid kind of inbound and outbound team, usually they're tasked with following up with those leads, right? And I think for anybody who's been in the SDR game for a while, and I started, keep in mind, as an inbound SDR, that was my sole job, is following up with these things. It's kind of funny, right? When I was an inbound SDR, this was 6 or 7 years ago. I was just thinking, man, there's got to be a better way to do this, because what I'm doing is basically looking at the attributes of why these people came inbound, right? If they came from this trade show, if they downloaded this white paper, having somewhat of a boilerplate email mixed with some personalization about what they did and, kind of send it off. And you don't have to be too sophisticated for somebody that raised their hand. They'll usually respond to you if they want to set up the meeting. That's what we do on the behalf of SDRs. So you don't have to kind of put them in a cadence of your own and remember to follow up and do all these steps. We do that on your behalf. So you just kind of are able to cherry pick the meetings and take the people who are interested and don't have to waste time on the ones that clearly aren't. And to your answer question about kind of web chat, we right now don't do live web chat. It's all kind of post engagement follow-up, but that's within 5 minutes of somebody filling out a form. Our assistant reaches out to get in touch with the prospect. And we've done quite extensive research on kind of what is best practice and what conversion rates people see with different types of messages, different response times, the touch sequences over, say 8 times in 2 weeks. So anyway, again,
Yes.
Drinking the Kool-Aid, but
I love it. No, I mean, and I asked this, I'm personally interested. People ask me about it and they want an update. And, it's funny because a lot of inbound leads, and you probably have better stats on this, but a lot of inbound leads are never actually followed up on by anybody because people are just like, this is a bunch of crap. I don't want to waste my time calling all these people because they're too low level or they're just kicking the tires. Like, humans make decisions on these things, and there's some crazy stats out there that like most of the inbound leads that you spend all this money producing, nobody ever calls or follows up on. And so it seems like with what you're saying, I mean, could you like unleash your system on all the inbound leads that you have in your system? Somebody has?
Yeah, and I've been on both sides of the fence, right? So I've spent most of my time on the sales side, and I ran a marketing ops team actually for about a year at Aptus before coming here, and so I've been on that other side of the fence where I've seen cost per lead, and it's really surprising to see kind of what the cost per lead is. I recommend any SDR really digging into that because it gives you a much greater respect for the inbound leads that are driven when you really get a sense for how much money the company actually spends on them. And yes, you could unleash this on any inbound lead. Typically, it is tied to kind of marketing campaigns, right? So trade shows is a pretty clear example of where the value could come in for something like this, where let's take Dreamforce as an example. I think anybody listening out there as an SDR that has participated in Dreamforce in the past, a lot of it is about kind of, if we bucket it into pre and post event, before the event, you're following up with a ton of people who maybe came to Dreamforce in the past, people who have Salesforce, and trying to basically drive pre-booked demos or meetings at the event. And that's a huge time suck, right? That's most of your, September is really kind of pushing that. And then after the event, now you've got this huge list of people who, you scan their badge at an event. Who knows how good those people are, right? There's especially the free day at Dreamforce, right? There's who knows who off the street trying to get some swag. Do you really want to follow up with all those people, 8 times over 2 weeks and so on? Probably not. So I would suggest, and from this is kind of from running teams in the past, you really want to kind of focus your efforts for your SDR team on things that are human, right? Things where they're creating value, where they're making these human connections, not necessarily playing marketing. So that's kind of the bridge that we build between that sales and marketing world for inbound leads.
Yeah, because if you think about the sales development process, if you followed around a sales development rep all day, and nobody's going to do that. Maybe somebody is. I don't know. Maybe I'll do it someday. But you literally follow them around all day with a notebook, and you're like, what are the actual activities that they're doing? You could literally break their job into discrete, parts, and then anything that's the rote, repetitious, it can be automated. And anything that's human, that's the actual personality and the persuasiveness and the relentlessness, to get the meeting and stuff like that. We're not there yet, as far as I know. Some of those Boston Dynamic robots are freaking scary, but as far as I know, we cannot replace that yet. And so what you're saying with your solution is let's take away those parts that are just automated, repetitious stuff and potentially get more opportunities and then leave more time for the human aspect.
Exactly, right. And I would also say, to your point earlier, right, I think if we really dig into the data, and I've done this on both sides as leading SDR teams and running marketing ops, it just doesn't happen, right? For good reason, I'd say, right? Again, going back to that Dreamforce example, do you want to follow up with that person who came in off the street to get, your magnet or whatever was at your booth? No, but there might be some needles in the haystack, right? Of those thousands of leads that came in, there might be a couple that are good, but you don't want to follow up with all of them. We've done, again, we have something, I think we've conversed with 300 million people through our AI assistants. So you could imagine the data that we've collected and kind of what we've seen as best practice. And we actually publish out some of this research, and we also at the same time secret shop companies, and we kind of offer this to you. If anybody wants us to secret shop you, we're happy to, and we'll provide the data for kind of what's really happening from a lead follow-up perspective. And one of the really cool things that we publish out is we call it the 4 Ps report. So we kind of measure this follow-up process, and this was before I was at Converska, I thought this was really cool, where, it was kind of the aha moment for me. I was like, these are the 4 things how you should measure inbound lead follow-up. And so the 4 Ps are promptness. how quickly do you follow up, which, everything shows that within 5 minutes of a hot inbound lead coming in, maybe not a trade show lead, but somebody filling out a form, it's significantly higher. And the report, 4Ps report, shows exactly how much higher, significantly higher response rate if you follow up within 5 minutes. Then there's persistence, right? I think we all know this. You want to follow up something like 8 times over 2 weeks. Well, 2/3 of people give up after 1 or 2 attempts. So, and I think like we talk about this all the time, but it never seems to get better, even with all the platforms out there that we can get. It's we're always attracted to the new shiny object.
Of course.
The third P is yep. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and okay, third P. Put a bookmark there because I want to know what it is. But
yeah,
I was just saying. I mean, like I totally see the use case moving forward of anything that comes in, but it's like I also want to talk to you about, I want to let you finish that, but I want to talk to you about like, what about the 100,000 leads that I have in the database right now that we spent tons of money on? We got all these names. There could be gold in there. What do we do with those? So third P, and then we'll talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So third P is personalization, right? Kind of a no-brainer. Like, hey, use the attributes of what the person did in the past to engage with you, use their name, all of those things, right? And then fourth is performance, right? Actually getting your email through to the inbox so it doesn't get caught in spam. Yeah. Something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but 50% of business emails end up in spam. So those are the 4 Ps.
Holy crap, dude. I know that for sure. I mean, I know that I go in there. I mean, Google is nuts. I mean, they're just like, they put everything in spam and then they hope for the best. And so, I mean, if you take away anything from this, you guys, listening on the podcast, go in after this and check your spam folder because there may be some really good leads in there. But yeah, okay, so that's great information. Can we download that report somewhere or get the 4 Ps?
Yeah.
If they go to your website? Yeah.
The one from our 2017 research is on our website, and we're publishing out the new one pretty soon. We've collected all the data, and we're putting it all together. So
okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I want to add, like, how can you use this retroactively? So, like, for the old names that may or may not be relevant anymore, can you use Conversica to reach out to them and try to drum up some interest?
Yes, the redheaded stepchild leads from the past. Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we use our own product internally, and so I could tell you a million different stories about our customers, but how we use it is we have re-engage campaigns. So 3 months or so after a lead comes inbound, we send the assistant back after them to follow up, and everything kind of drives to a meeting, right? So check back in, say, hey, I know that you did XYZ action before. Hey, it's been 3 months. Is there any interest, right? And it's just constantly tapping into the database and driving meetings from it. And it's pretty cool. I mean, funny story, my second day at Conversica was actually, I was at the Topo conference. We had a booth there, and I was on the floor. I always seem to end up on a trade show floor like my first or second day at new companies. So, I don't know how that all works out. But so anyway, I was at that conference in front row or something for the VP of marketing from MongoDB, who I didn't even know was a customer of ours at the time, being my second day. The last 10 minutes of his presentation was about how he was using Conversica. So I was like, this is awesome. I guess I made the right choice. And he was talking about how they booked 160 opportunities in 6 months from basically leads that their sales team kind of discarded and, DQ'd essentially. So I was like, okay, this is awesome, right? Kind of a vote of confidence for the move that I made at least. But
nice.
A really good story too, kind of, because those leads just get forgotten, right?
Totally.
Fall by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, and a friend of mine who runs an outsourced SDR company, I mean, that's the first thing that they do. They go in, they go, give me all your leads that you've ever, produced in the last 5 years. And, they just start calling all those people because there's gold in there. And it's, I think we touched on it, but it's the human element of looking at a list and going, there's nothing here. I think that decision is costing companies like millions and millions of dollars every year because a human is making it. It may not be the right decision. It may be the right decision, but you should plug in something like Conversica to find out and, stir things up. Now, who do you compete against? Is there any competitor to what you're doing?
Man, it's a funny question, right?
I know you're going to say nobody, but...
Well, I mean, it's a more complicated answer than nobody. Because we, in a sense, we compete philosophically with some companies. Like, so if you think about companies with chatbots, right? If you think about Drift, Olark, and these companies who we actually use internally. If you go to our website, you can chat with our team.
That's interesting.
Hopefully they're on the chatbot service, and but we use those internally. But philosophically, like, we want you to fill out a form on a website because that's we need to collect, or you need to collect the prospect's email address and name, basically, and ideally drive some kind of action for us to follow up versus somebody live on the website. But we don't really compete with them. Again, we use them internally, and it's not like a head-to-head competition. We embrace web chat and think it's really cool. But there's really nobody else to the scale that we are doing this kind of conversational AI assistant. And I'm sure there will be.
There you go, folks. I mean, because they just made a huge round of funding, right? I mean, they must be doing something right over there. It's probably your leadership of building the pipeline.
Yeah, it was really. I went out to VCs and they just I sold them.
It's mainly because of what you've been doing with the SDR team. So no, hey, you know what? We are critically important and leveraging the tool. I think it's freaking awesome. Let me ask you this: looking forward, what do you think is going to happen with this industry that you're in? Are you going to become swallowed up by another company that's trying to do this, a bigger company? Are you going to be independent? I mean, do you feel like there's a future? I mean, you guys are right on the cusp of the future. So where is this going in the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot, and I don't think we have the time to get into all of it, David. Maybe we can grab beers in San Francisco at some point and talk about all kinds of things. But I think,
honestly,
I think
I don't drink, but I'll get I'll get a cup of tea with you.
Probably easier to find kombucha spots in San Francisco than watering holes. So
that's true. So what do you think in the next 1 minute? Like, where are we going with all this?
Yeah, I think, really focusing on the customer experience is going to be the way things go. And if you think about the customer experience, right, it starts with kind of just somebody out there that might have a little bit of interest or might not even know your product, to somebody that's maybe a lead in your system, to somebody that is engaged and becomes an opportunity, and the whole life cycle to them becoming a customer and renewal. I think the real winner in this space, or the company that is going to really drive, maybe absorb other companies, is the one that's going to control this whole end-to-end customer experience. It's something that we realize, and we have a lot of other assistants that beyond sales that we have and are continuing to roll out. And so, it's something that we're moving aggressively towards. But who knows, right? If I had the actual answer to that, then I'd probably be a VC and go raise a bunch of money.
I would maybe coming or driving race cars most of the day. I look at when you describe the future, there's a big looming tower in downtown San Francisco that is above the fog and looking out into the future. And it's like,
I'm in San Mateo and can see it.
Yeah. You can see it. I can see it. I can see it here from my house. So big, that damn thing. They're taking over the world. But at least the guy seems like a good guy. So anyways, Addison, dude, this has been so interesting, man. I mean, I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We got to get you back on. It'd be cool to do like a call, like a webinar on, how to how to break out the SDR process for people, like how to chart it out, and then how to plot out, what can be automated and what is the human element and stuff like that. So there's an idea. We'll do round 2 at some point.
I love it. You heard it here first. All right.
Cool. All right.
You know what, David? One more thing.
Yeah.
I have to give you and the Tenbound team a huge shout out. The Sales Development Conference, I sent a couple SDRs, newer SDRs who started in the last month or so before the conference started. And they still, months later, talk about how awesome it was and how many great thought leaders they met. They were kind of starstruck meeting a lot of people there and getting face-to-face conversations. But they had an amazing time. Again, still talk about it. I think it helped their ramp time by a couple of months at least, just from really getting absorbed into kind of the whole SDR world. So thank you for putting that together and everything that you do for the SDR world.
Oh, man, thank you. I appreciate that so much. I was spent yesterday, and I'm going out again tomorrow to scout locations for this year's. It's going to be August 23rd. It's a Friday. It's way before Labor Day, so you have no excuse. It goes right into Friday, and it's not at the end of the month. It's not at the end of the quarter. So we have no excuse this year. It's going to be in downtown San Francisco. And very quickly, what we're excited about is we're shooting for 500 people, so almost double the amount of last year. And we're going to have 3 tracks, which is really cool. You heard it here first. We're going to have leadership, rep, and operations, right? So anybody who's just a total nerd on operations of how to run a tight ship on the operations side for sales development, you got to be there this year. So yeah, dude, thank you so much. Let's get the whole crew this year, Addison, and we'll see you in August for sure.
Awesome. You'll find me in the operations room.
Nice.
I'll live to nerd out all day.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again. Connect with Addison on LinkedIn and jump on Conversica. Download some of those reports. We'll put those links in the show notes as well. And Addison, thanks again. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, David. Thanks, everybody, for listening to me. Have a great one.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Development Podcast, the only audio forum 100% focused and dedicated to sales development, with your host, David Delaney. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube and take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes. Your support makes our show possible. If you are struggling with your sales development program, contact us at tenbound.com for a no-obligation exploratory call. Again, that's tenbound.com.